All right, so I'm here on slide 8 still, and even though I've been talking a little bit about slide 8, I want it to be a seamless discussion into slide 9. So I'm going to briefly mention again. So we have demography, which is the vital statistics, the births, the deaths, and where we live. And we had said we have this rich world and we have this poor world. And in the rich countries like ours, the developed countries, the average age of population is 40. And that's really above the prime reproductive ages, right? Prime reproductive ages would be sort of late teens through the 30s. So if the average age is over 40, we're already sort of past our prime for having kids. And the life expectancy is really long, about 90 years in many places. But we have a shrinking population in the wealthy, developed countries. In contrast to that, in the developing countries, they average 7 kids on average, and half of the population is under 15, and their population is doubling every 18 years. And these countries make up 80% of the world population. So most of the world population is in these areas where they are undeveloped. Now, we have other countries where, because of stuff, whatever is happening, their life expectancy is dropping. Russia. I mentioned in class, my wife is originally from Russia, and she always talks about a period of time that she calls Perestroika. And what it is it was a transition from communism to capitalism. It's not that easy to do that. And as a result of that, it ends up that the people in power are really in power, when you sort of shift that way. And she lived in St. Petersburg during this period of time, St. Petersburg, Russia. And there were all kinds of food shortages. She had to stand in line every single day to get bread and meat. And she could only get just a small amount of each, and sometimes there wasn't anything. And so because of this difficult transition that they've been through, their life expectancy is dropping. And you know what? I think I saw where in the U.S., because of COVID, and our response or lack of response to it, our life expectancy has gone down as well. I think by just 1 year. They've gone down 10 years in Russia. And it's because during that transition period, they had a collapsing economy, lots of inflation, lots of crime and corruption. There are other parts of the world who are also seeing a reduction in life expectancy, but it's for a different reason. AIDS. The countries that they talk about being the sub-Saharan countries, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Zambia, and Namibia. You all knew that, right? Yeah. Yeah, we're kind of ignorant of African countries on the most. But anyway, these lower countries below the Sahara there, 39% of adults are HIV positive. That's a lot. And HIV can be controlled, but if you're in a developing country, it's not being controlled. Okay, and so then they say that if you are a 15-year-old in one of these 4 countries, half of you will die before you're 50, and as a result of AIDS. So we have lots of reasons why population growth can be going the other direction. And finally, in Botswana, one of these countries, the life expectancy is 31.6 years. Terrible. So we have a lot to overcome in our world. All right, so on slide 10, we have some definitions. There's a word called fecundity. And fecundity is the physical ability to reproduce. Now, when I was a young ecologist, I studied a marine animal, and I was trying to figure out what is the fecundity of this marine worm. And so what I would do is I would go out, and you could collect the worms in life and open them up, kill them, sorry, but kill them, and you could count and figure out how many eggs each of the females had. And so this is the physical ability to reproduce, the potential. So every one of those eggs conceivably could become another worm. And so you would use those kinds of numbers to calculate fecundity. Now, in reality, they have external fertilization, maybe, there's all kinds of factors that will limit the percentage of those eggs that actually become a baby worm. And so the fertility rate is the actual number, whereas the fecundity is the reproductive potential. So don't confuse those. So women, conceivably, if you're, say 20 to 30 years, you have a period of your life when you're producing eggs, and you could have a baby every year. You have 9 months to have a baby, get pregnant 3 months later, So the fecundity might be 30. How many of your friends have 30 kids? I'm sure it's 0. Because that fertility is the actual number. Now, when you talk about a population, we talk about something called the crude birth rate. And so within a population, you just say, how many births per year per 1,000 people? Now, I'm going to show you a picture of some ladies here. And some of those ladies would be more likely to have children than others. If you're an older person, a 90-year-old woman isn't likely to have a baby, but she is counted in as a female in that crude birth rate. So the crude birth rate is the number of babies per 1,000 females without correcting for whether they can even conceive at that point in their life. All right. Slide 11. Okay, slide 11, we have a bunch of lines. We have a red line, a blue line, a purplish, darker colored line, and then a green line. And this, if you look on this, it's total fertility per 1,000 women. That's the crude birth rate. And here's time going back to 1950. And you can see that the world was at 5 in 1950, 5 children per 1,000, per woman. No, this is per woman. So what did a woman typically have in 1950 worldwide? 5 children. But then you can see in the developed countries, there was only 3 children in 1950, and it's much lower. But in the least developed, you can see that the numbers are much higher. So while we have countries like the U.S. or China where we're either sort of right at break even, which would be the replacement level, or countries like Russia where, or China where they're below replacement. So 1/3 of the countries in the world are either right where you want to be, which replacement would be 2.1 children. So let's think about that. 2.1. Well, some children die, right? So you got a mama and you got your papa. That's 2. You have some children die. So if you're going to have level population growth, you need about 2.1 children per woman, right? And then, but like in China, they went from a fertility rate of 6 to 1.7. So they're below, their population is falling. But worldwide, we had said the population fertility is 2.6, and so that means we're increasing. We talked about total fertility rate, that a woman, that fecundity number, we'd said, in theory, you could have 25 or 30 kids. And it ends up, the royalty, they loved kids, right? The kings and queens, what the women would do, they were kind of baby factories. So they would have a baby, and then they would pass the baby off to another woman who was nursing, who had milk, and she would raise that baby, and she'd have another one. And so during the 17th and 18th centuries, royal type women would have 25 or 30 kids. So anyway, that's the extreme. All right. So if we have crude birth rate, and we had said we're always talking about this balance between deaths and births, we also have crude death rates. And again, crude means that we're not calculating, we're not saying, well, what percentage of the population are on their deathbed. We're just saying per 1,000 people, maybe they're all 20-year-olds or maybe they're all 90-year-olds. We don't correct for this. It's just crude death rate. And this is what leads to this balance between a growing population and a population that is decreasing in size. And just to give you the definition on slide 12, it's the number of deaths per 1,000 people. And again, it's not corrected for whether there's a lot of old or young people there. And we have some examples in Africa. You might have a crude death rate of 20. Costa Rica or Belize, it's 4. In Denmark, it's a developed country, it's 12. Oh yeah, they have a lot of old people, So I'm going to stop right here, and we'll come back on slide 13.